The best advice that I can give for a music major is to understand that you are comparing yourself against people who have a decade or more experience than you, like the graduate students and the professors, etc. And no matter what you do, it's never going to be good enough, and you have to be okay with that. So if you go into studio, which is, for people who don't know, where you are performing with other people, not just the undergraduate students that you're performing with, you're also performing with graduate students, with doctoral students, and like you'll even watch your professors' recitals and stuff. And just know that you are not at that level yet, and that's okay. If you put forth daily effort every single day, you'll slowly make progress over time. And I'm talking like decades worth of time doing that consistently in order to get good. The scholarship that's on skill acquisition and expertise, like the whole 10,000 hour rule, is based off of a guy named K. Anders Ericsson, who was like a sports psychologist or performance psychologist, and found that on average is around 10,000 hours. But some domains like wrestling at that time of the research was like around 8,000 hours. But for music, it's around 21,000 hours to get to the international level of success. So just know that it's going to take a lot of time, and you might be comparing yourself against people who have more experience than you. Like I started drumming in 8th grade. I had no music, anything up until that point. And I was performing in a studio where some of my peers had been playing drums and piano, etc. since they were like 4 and 5 years old. So there were skill gaps in there, and that's okay. I'm saying all this to say, for advice for a new music student, schedule in time for breaks and understand that the progress is going to take months and years to get better. And you are going to be stuck in that daily grind where you're not going to feel like you're making much progress over time. So one of the things you can do is, if you're like really trying to refine a piece, like for a recital or something, record yourself and then don't listen to that until like a month later or a quarter later. So like 3 or 4 months. Go back and then listen to that and compare it to a recording in the future. When you have that side-by-side comparison, you'll be like, oh, I can actually hear the progress. But when you're every day like grinding out like a measure that you're not good at, or a phrase you're not good at, or whatever, you might not hear that progress over time. And if you can just set regular checkpoints every month or every quarter or so to go back and listen to your prior recordings from a year ago or from like even just a month ago, you'll be able to hear those differences compound over time, and you'll be less likely to burn out, which is something that happens to most of the music majors that I've went to school with and knew. They either stop playing music entirely or they switch degrees. So if you can find ways to prevent that burnout by taking breaks and by being able to acknowledge the progress that you are making over time, then all of that can really help prevent that. It is very difficult. So I was like dating somebody who was getting a science degree, and I had double the amount of classes that she had and less credits total. A lot of her classes were like 5 credit classes, and then I would have like 5 courses that were all 1 credit class. So the amount of work that you're going to put into it is an absurd amount of effort compared to other majors, and it will never be good enough. And that is okay, because again, you're comparing yourself to people who may have been playing longer than you've been alive, and that's just a fact. So you have to get comfortable with that. Before I get to the next tip, I just want to say really quickly that you can find literally thousands of hours of free drumming play-alongs and drumming tips in the link at the top of the description, or by going into my home tab of YouTube. What advice would I give to my 17-year-old self? This might not be what you're expecting, but go to a therapist. So when I was 17, so when I was in high school and then my undergrad, I was severely depressed and suicidal. That really held me back a lot in different ways, because when I was thinking about those thoughts, I was not thinking about improving in various areas in life, whether it's like drumming or my health or whatever. And so going to a therapist is probably the best thing that I ever did. And I didn't do that until midway through my undergrad-ish, something like that. So when I was 17, it would have been really helpful to just go to a therapist. But if we're going not related to just like life in general, but if we're specifically talking about drumming, I would say to focus more on the technique exercises and less on the chop stuff. So if we're like looking on here, what I recommend is like 50 to 60% of your time is on technique, and then 30 to 40% of your time is on grid with like rudiment on one, and then 10 to 20% at most of your time is on the chop stuff. I spent a lot of time focusing on playing like cheesy poofs or flammus or all these different shopping sprees or whatever, and not enough time on the stuff that like really mattered, which was the technique exercises. So that's what I would focus on. Drumming progress journal is one of the ways that I help myself keep track of like how I'm doing over time, so I can actually see progress. It keeps track of like, well, how am I doing on average for like this one? And so if I scroll to the right, you can see all these different BPMs right here, and then how I did on it. Like, was the quality of playing, how did I feel, etc. You can make a journal like this and keep track of like an exercise or a rudiment or whatever. This is a very thorough approach for doing something like that, and you can actually see the growth over time. But another way that I like to do this, monthly or quarterly check-ins on your own playing. Record yourself now playing through an exercise, work on that for a month, and then record yourself again, and then actually go back and compare the two. Listen to how you were a month ago compared to where you are right now. And you do that every month or every quarter or whatever. Going back and listening to your performing over time can really help with actually seeing that progress. It was something that I also did when I taught elementary band. So I recorded them on their very first time playing through Hot Cross Buns. On our final concert, I played it for the parents. It's actually my ringtone. So Hot Cross Buns. 1 open, 2 open, Hot Cross Buns. And it sounds horrible. And so I would play that at our final concert for the parents. And then we'd play through Hot Cross Buns again live to show like, hey, parents, listen to the amount of growth that we had. This is where we were when we started a while ago. This is where we are now. That's a really simple way of being able to show that progress. Drumming tip 85, why you'll never feel successful of it as a musician. A lot of people expect this like exponential level of growth with improvement. So what you expect is like, hey, I should be getting exponentially better, because it's based off of the idea of people who are like, oh, strive for 1% improvement every single day. Okay, well, 1% improvement is technically exponential improvement over a significant period of time. So what actually ends up happening is it kind of goes like this. You'll make huge gains, and then over time, the skill's not going to improve that much, and you have to put in more effort to make smaller amounts of incremental improvement over time. And that's normal. That's actually like part of the process. And this is based off of research. Part of when I did my doctorate, studied at the beginning was like skill acquisition and expertise. And so I looked at a lot of research from high performance musicians, high performance athletes, like Olympic level athletes, etc. So like, this is not my opinion. This is literally decades of research. One of the hardest parts about like getting better at that like expert level is finding incremental gains in here, because it's not going to be this anymore. I have a weird career that I've been at the higher tiers of both music education, which is where my 3 degrees are in, but then also computer science education. And so I was speaking with like the top end of computer science educators. All of them had this like, I feel like I'm not good enough. I feel like I'm an imposter. I feel like the efforts I'm making like aren't getting better. Like, you're either like a narcissist who thought you were like God's gift to everything, or you were in the imposter syndrome where you're like, nothing I'm doing is making an improvement. I'm not getting better, etc. But the trick is like, you just got to keep going and got to keep pushing through that and finding ways to stay motivated with it. Take a step back from your playing, acknowledge the growth that you've made over time, and then try some of those tips that I recommended with recording yourself. This is normal. This is part of the process. You're not a failure for this. It's not like you're broken or something. It just takes time. You can do it. It just takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, more than people think. Thoughts on adding sensors to the middle of the drums that shock you every time you hit them? Why do you assume it's negative reinforcement? Huh? What if I like it?